Alan, Darby, Jacqueline, Martínez. This is the Buyer's Boardroom. Learn the most about who you are today and where you want to be after.
Welcome back, friends and family, to the Buyer's Boardroom. Rick Music once again, your host. And with me, as always, two of my best friends, Jacqueline Martínez and Alan Darby, who are going to continue this journey. We are on a 4-car train ride, and today is episode 3 of our mini-series. And I'm actually really looking forward to this one because I think it's a hot topic for most sellers that are entertaining the thought of transacting. What have we covered so far in our mini-series? Our first one opened up with structural differences of our buyers that you'd be considering. Number 2 followed up with our life cycle differences and where they are on their journey. Today, we're going to talk about the autonomy differences, or what you'll have to consider when transitioning. So, Alan, I have to say I'm having a lot of fun. This is the one I've been looking forward to the most. This is the one people want to hear the most about. Like, what am I giving up?
That's exactly right. And yeah, fear of losing control. It is the number one cited reason for firms not to move forward with a transaction or be really concerned and nervous about transacting, is this loss of control. Okay. And so one of the first things that I do when I encounter this, which is kind of like every time you talk to someone, someone is going to raise this point. I have to ask them to pause and say, let's define what you truly mean by losing control, right? Because the reality is none of the buyers that we work with, and our roster now is 65 and growing, none of them would describe themselves, nor would we describe them as like this dictatorial regime that is going to strip away all of your rights and privileges and like turn you into this robotic employee that does their bidding. There's no one like that. Even in the most firms that the firms that we would say have the highest amount of change requirement or adoption of their standards and process, even they treat their advisors like partners and business owners. Think about it from a high level common sense perspective. They're buying a business operated by a business owner. Now, wouldn't that be really dumb to turn the business owner who's built this successful operation into like this automaton that just implements their stuff?
It also doesn't mean it's not a possibility, right?
It's right. It's possible, but we have to ask them, okay, I get it. It's possible. The sun could not come up tomorrow too. That's possible. But is it plausible? Okay. And then is it probable? And the answer is it's definitely possible. I don't think it's plausible, and it's 100% not probable, like that they're going to do this. And so we're going to unpack this topic today and get into the granular level of detail behind it. From a buyer's perspective, we walk all of our buyers through this concept of mandatory points of alignment. And a lot of buyers aren't used to doing this, stating what they're going to require of you to change and adopt. But we know that that's at the crux of this question, am I going to lose control? And so we have all the buyers give us their mandatory points of alignment. What does the seller have to change, do, adopt that's different than what they're doing today to be happy and successful on the other side of the transaction?
It answers the question, though, too, of like when someone broadly will say they're not a cultural fit, it's really all of these underlying reasons that we're going to walk through of what is really meant by that.
I would say, first, a loss of autonomy doesn't equate to misery either. Like, for example, I've never had a seller complain over losing decision-making capabilities over compliance or billing or payroll. So there's a lot of things that, like in my business, I'd love to lose my right to make decisions over that, because it frankly keeps me up at night and there's a lot of burden and responsibility. So, kind of start with the overall, buyers aren't dictators. A loss of autonomy doesn't equate to misery. We just have to get very specific on which points of autonomy or decision-making are we talking about, and understand from the seller what they're comfortable to give up versus the things that they really need to retain for whatever their reasons are. I will say that the things that sellers really mean when we unpack it tend to be my calendar. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want to be told when I have to show up to work. I don't have to get permission when I go on vacation if I want to work remotely, and Jacqueline, wouldn't you say that across the board, like 100%, buyers don't micromanage anybody's calendar?
No. I mean, you wouldn't be at the place that you're at if you weren't intrinsically motivated to grow the business, to maintain the business, all of those things. No one needs to keep an eye on you and monitor your calendar.
Exactly. If they needed to do that, they should not be buying your business. Like, I have to tell you to get up and go to work. They should not be buying your business, and you would never be successful if that was the case anyway. Sometimes my wife has to tell me to get up and go to work. Okay. The second thing is, from a control, is they mean their clients. Don't tell me what to do for my clients. And we're going to unpack that a bit and later, but like that is an area where it's a spectrum of buyers regarding how they want to assert their view on the client experience. And essentially, for today's conversation, when I say client experience, I mean the financial planning, advice and recommendations you're giving your clients, and the investment management. So there's other things that I think really go into the client experience, but those are the two specific things, and we're gonna unpack that. So, but loss of control is number one, and we need to really dive into that to help the sellers realize that there are some things you do want to give up control of, probably. And the good news is, whenever you don't want to give up, the spectrum of buyers is so robust today that you can find likely multiple potential matches that their model aligns with what you need to retain regarding decision making.
So let's get to it, guys. We've got two guests today. One is Art Ambarik, the CEO of Perigon Wealth Management. They are a San Francisco-based RIA, managing about $6 billion in AUM, and some recent occurrences for them. They've just recently announced they took on a PE sponsor, Constellation. So a lot happening there. Looking forward to that interview. And our second guest is Brent Brodeski, the CEO of Savant, which is an RIA based in Chicago, managing over $20 billion in AUM. So two very healthy perspectives on what we're looking to do here today. So, Alan, let's get to it. Our first of three bullets, we're going to talk about structural, operational, and client experience as pertain to the autonomy trade-off, as you might put it. So, Ellen, take us there.
The structural points of alignment, we kind of use these internally. We have our lens technology, which is like match.com between buyers and sellers. So we've captured so many data points on the buyers, and it's algorithmically removing buyers from the matching process based on the responses that the seller gives us during our process, and we've already captured that from the buyers. The easiest way to eliminate potential buyers from consideration, or you should eliminate from consideration, is based on these structural topics. There's only a few, and they're very easy to spot. If you had the information at your hand, you could quickly cycle through these topics and determine this firm is a fit, this one is not a fit, etc. And so the basic structural alignment concepts we're talking about here would be the fee model. Okay, so the fee model is simply, are you a fee-only firm, or are you a hybrid firm that has a broker-dealer affiliation? Do you accept any type of commission revenue, like insurance or risk management commissions? So that's a real quick way of determining a structural point of alignment. So, for example, if you are a hybrid seller and you needed to have a broker-dealer component of your business, and it doesn't matter what percentage of your business is fee versus broker-dealer, you need that broker-dealer. Well, if it's a fee-only buyer that's not going to permit you to have that, then that firm should be removed from consideration, because it just doesn't work, period. You're not going to get that done. So the fee model is certainly one very easy thing to identify. Another one would be custodians. You might have your assets at Fidelity or Schwab, wherever you're custodying at. Well, if the buyer either doesn't have those custodial relationships, or in the case that they don't have them, they won't go establish a new custodial relationship with the one you prefer, then that's probably a showstopper as well, unless you're open to moving custodians. And so that is typically, it's certainly one of the questions we ask early on from the seller is like, if the buyer doesn't have your custodians, are you okay to move or not? And if the answer is no, we're not moving custodians, then we need to have alignment immediately between the custodians of the buyer and the seller, or else we shouldn't include them in the matching process.
These are hard data points. These either they're fit or not. It kind of reminds me of when I met my wife. You alluded to Match.com earlier, and there were definitely some hard no's. Like, if you're going to exist in my world, she gave me a list of about 20 things that had to happen to be successful.
You matched all 20? Oh my goodness.
No.
Really?
She had 10 non-starters, and that was not.
You were like 9.5.
Yeah, like there was literally, to get to a second date with Jessica, I had to switch custodians. My money moved to her money. Like, all of those things happened. I had to have a growth appetite to get out there and grow. It was important for her. So I'm listening to this and I'm like, feels like my life. I think I could have used the Lens app when I met Jessica.
Right. Well, and other ones that come up, maybe joining the buyer's ADB. Like, if you have an interest in giving up the compliance functions, which most folks do and are really looking forward to, then that will be a match for certain buyers. Or if you really are set on maintaining your separate ADB from a compliance standpoint, that you're really still a standalone, and then maybe more of an investment in your firm is the right approach. And then I would say branding too. Oftentimes buyers will want you to convert to their brand, maybe not immediately, maybe over a shorter period of time, but sometimes it is immediately, and just knowing what the expectation is going in.
So Rick, those are simple, like easy to spot mismatches between you and a potential partner. So we start with the structural screen: fee model, custodial relationships, ADV, branding. Those would be the ones that we want to really check for. And if you don't match, then we should not move forward with this.
Just a quick question for the listeners. Are there times where you get through the structural screening process, these simple things, and there's like, oh my God, there's just not going to be a fit and this person's never going to sell? Does that ever happen?
No. There's the buyer market is so robust today that it would probably have to be something like a massive compliance issue that you held, which, that could kind of weave its way into the structural items. If you do have a big compliance issue, that from a buyer's perspective would be a knockout for a lot of the buyer pool, but generally speaking, at least I can't recall one where they had a need for a certain custodian and we couldn't find them multiple matches, because most buyers are multi-custodial anyway.
Okay. Well, so that was structural, guys. We're going to move into item number 2 under this autonomy umbrella, and we're going to talk a little bit about operations.
So this is the easiest one, I think, because frankly speaking, this is the pain point for a lot of sellers. And so they're quite comfortable divesting these types of functions, but it's the operational match, which essentially means what operational functions are you comfortable divesting to your partner, the buyer in this case. So that's things like, it's basically all the back office functions: HR, compliance, accounting, marketing, not client-facing items. I would say of this list, marketing would probably be the one that we would get the most reluctance to divest, particularly if a seller has something truly unique that they do, like they're a podcaster, maybe they're a writer, they do a lot of videos, and the buyer, from their compliance perspective, doesn't want that to be done by individual offices. They try to do it centrally. But this is a pretty easy one to overcome for most sellers, because that is where they have the most problems in their life. That's the things that they really don't like doing. And so the buyer is going to come in and take over all that stuff, and they're perfectly happy to divest most operational functions. But if there is something in there that's near and dear to you, but there's plenty of buyers who have wiggle room in this as well. But usually where I see sellers reluctant to give up any of these operational functions is if they have a staff member on their team, like a compliance officer. So you have a CCO, right? The buyers all have their CCOs in a whole compliance department. So you don't need a CCO typically when you transact with another firm. So the question then becomes, okay, what do I do with my CCO? Typically they look to repurpose that person, because most smaller firms, $2 billion and under, they don't have like a dedicated CCO. It's usually one of the owners or someone who that's a part of their function. And so giving it up, they can spend their time in other places. but that would be maybe an area of reluctance. But I typically operational issues are pretty easy to spot. Well, it's pretty easy to get alignment with most buyers, given that the sellers are perfectly happy to get rid of these things and the back office stuff.
And I would say more often too, when it comes to practically speaking, the ability to like hire and fire folks, we never hear about buyers coming in and, getting rid of folks or hiring without the involvement and the collaboration with the partner that's joining, and then everyone's on the same page and it's part of a broader vision, so that irrational fear around, oh, you're going to come in and fire all my staff to create more EBITDA. It's such a war for talent right now and retaining good people. That's so far from what really happens. But technically speaking, you won't ever see in an agreement that you have full option to hire and fire as you will. It will be in relation to the buyer's involvement for that.
It seems to me so far with both of these, I don't want to say anything is easy, but you've made it clear that some of these things are pretty quick to identify.
Yeah, the operational function, and again, it's rooted in going back to our opening kind of dialogue about autonomy and giving up decision making. The thing that sellers are typically most interested to give up are all these operational functions. And so therefore, a buyer who comes in, which is probably the majority of buyers, who wants to take over all of these functions, they don't have a problem. But we need to get into under the hood with the seller and ask about these areas to determine if there's anything unique about you that you want to retain accounting functions, or if you want to retain HR, which that like rarely happens.
Operationally speaking, are there any controversial decisions that are being made or alignment points that come up?
I would say not many. One area that comes to mind as you were saying that is data, maintaining data. So buyers typically, 10 years of data they go back and port over. You might have 20 years. Yeah, you might have more data than they're ready or interested in porting over to their systems. But I found in those cases, if you want to pay for it, they're happy to let you do that. But very little, like Jacqueline brought up, the only one here, and that's the HR function. It's not over your people getting fired. Buyers don't want to get rid of your people. They want to keep your people. It's over when you want to go hire someone in the future, you're likely going to need to run that up the flagpole and get approval through it. And so that's where I've seen sellers get frustrated after the acquisition is they want to go hire someone and the buyer's like, whoa, pump your brakes a little bit. Like, maybe there's some central resources we can use. They're not trying to make your life more miserable by working harder and not being able to hire people, but they are trying to be smart about payroll costs, because that's the most expensive part of the wealth management enterprise. And so don't be surprised if you want to go hire someone that you have to get approval for that.
All right, perfect. So that was item 2, operationally speaking. So we're going to move into item 3, which is client experience and investment management. I'm kind of excited about this one because as a sales guy, I think client facing, I think of bringing on new clients, activating them, getting to the point where they do want to sign an agreement with you. And I think everybody sort of has their own process. I'm looking forward to the answer on this, because when I have my process and I have my rhythm and I'm thinking about making this next step, what kind of autonomy impact is this going to make in the client experience, guys?
Right. I would say some firms do have a very structured meeting cadence for onboarding and ongoing servicing, and they'll have specific, words for each step and that's how they're expecting new clients to be brought on. And all clients must adhere to that. But even when there is a framework, I would say most often we're hearing, okay, this is a framework of how it would ideally go, but we fully understand that not every step is going to be relevant for every client, and you can use pieces of it that are relevant for each client and skip others that aren't. Like if it's an ultra high net worth client, we're not focused on retirement planning. It's just totally different needs that client will have. And we can, and it's more of that. And then, but some buyers though do not have a set thing. They really just give the advisors full autonomy to keep doing what they've been doing and work with that. And it's not a branded process. And if that's not what you're seeking, because you already have a process that works for you and how you work with your clients, that's not something you're looking to solve for, then that's still a great match.
Just to be clear, we have the buyers that make you adopt their brand or don't. Are there buyers out there that have a brand that you can use if you want to, but you can still use your own sort of client experience? I'm using the word brand. I meant client experience. Like, hey, we have one if you want to use it, but you can still use your own if it works. Does that exist too?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say that's probably more common. There are buyers, and we'll go back to our days at United Capital, where United had a very specific client experience. And it was a major point of emphasis for us on the deal team to make it perfectly clear to the seller, like, if you're joining United, you need to be open and willing to adopt this client experience. So what is it? Well, it was the language we used to describe our value proposition to clients. United had a very specific language. They had words that we wanted to use. They had a very specific agenda and outcome that was supposed to occur in each step. So, that was a firm, United, who, if you were joining them, you were going to adopt their client experience. And I would tell the sellers who are considering United, if you see this, and we call it FinLife, but if you saw that and you can't see yourself doing this, then you will not be happy at United, right? And so it's got to be that clear. So we have other buyers that have similar things, and it's awesome, but you just have to see it, hear it, understand why they want you to change to adopt this client experience, and see yourself being able to do it. So it's a much more subjective way of determining if it's a match, because it's really highly dependent on how you perceive value in adopting it or changing that. But I would say the majority of buyers, they may have a client experience that they want you to adopt, but they're not dogmatic about it. They would take the position like, look, if what you're doing is working and you don't see value in this, keep on trucking. Now, they may try to win you over time. They have to give you data to support whatever their rationale is for that. But most firms are in the client experience. We're talking about the planning process, the onboarding process specifically here. We're going to get into investments in a minute, but the planning aspect of the client experience, most buyers take the position that, we have some stuff. If you want to use it, great. But if you want to keep doing what you're doing, we're happy with that too.
I would just add one point too, like when thinking about your succession planning and grooming up your next gen advisor in the office, that client experience is mostly intuitive to you. Yes, the words may be different. The exact things may be a little different than what you've been doing, but you already know what to do. But your next gen advisor doesn't know that intuitively. And so that's going to make them going from like a good advisor to a great advisor, being able to lean on that, walk through something systematically, make sure they're not missing any important steps.
You go ask a great advisor, how do you do what you do? Like, what makes you so great? And you will find that they have a very hard time describing it, because it's just innate to them. It's they wake up and it's like, they can talk, they can do it on a yellow pad and they sound amazing. It's great, right? Well, younger advisors don't always possess that trait. If they did, they wouldn't be working for you probably. And so what Jacqueline is saying is, I agree 100% that if that is you, having a partner, a buyer that has a client experience that you can train to makes their life way easier. And they can progress to becoming a great advisor much more rapidly than they would if they're trying to be you. That's where you have so many owners who've tried to hire advisors, younger advisors, and they end up quitting or they're fired, and they basically say, well, they didn't work out. I'm like, well, what didn't they do? Well, they couldn't do what I do. Like, well, not a lot of people can do what you do. So you might think about that in relation to who is a good partner for you in a transaction, if you indeed have those younger advisors who could really benefit from having a client experience. When we say client experience, I just want to be very clear. Client experience to me is what's delivered to the client, right? Part of it is like on the onboarding process, the planning process, and that's where that component of the client experience, I find it's a lot more liberal in terms of what the buyers will permit you to do.
Right. And I'm afraid you're about to tell me that investment management is where the clamps come down.
Yes, that is where it's way more difficult, right, Jacqueline? It's like the
Absolutely.
number one. It's the number one area that when we're bringing sellers through the process, we get to pretty quickly because it's a great screen for buyers. It's in the realm of client experience. We also add portfolio management autonomy. Okay. And so we need to understand from the seller's perspective, essentially, are you okay to divest investment management to a central team or not? Or where are you on that spectrum? You put one end of the spectrum, I can't wait to give it up. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's no way I'm ever giving it up. And there's somewhere in the middle for most advisors. Where do you fall? Because every buyer has an investment platform, right? What is a platform? Well, it's a menu of stuff managed by presumably a group of smart people with fancy letters after their name and great pedigrees. But it's the investment committee, and they've built this investment platform to be used by their advisors. Okay, and so the question is, after answering, like, what does the buyer require? This is a mandatory point of alignment we referenced earlier. Do you require your advisors who are joining you via acquisition to divest portfolio management to them, and or not? Or are you in some kind of, blend of autonomy? We have buyers that if you join them, look, you're giving up investment management. You're going to divest it to the central team. You no longer do that anymore. Now, even in those cases, as the advisor, you're still the one choosing off the menu of whatever they have. So there's a degree of control there, but you're no longer setting the investment strategy for the firm, building models, purchasing securities. That's all being done by the central team, and you're merely accessing it. Then there are other buyers at the other end who they say, we don't want to touch that. Like, you can continue managing money the way you are. If you've got something that you feel strongly about, knock yourself out. They may want you to centralize trading as sort of like a compliance control, but you can still be the portfolio manager, if that makes sense. And then there's everyone in between. There are firms that say, look, we want you to move to our platform, but we'll give you 3 years or something. Then they'll help map it all over to what you do is what is similar in their world. So we've got to really get granular on this investment piece and find out where you land, because it is a really bright line between a match or lack of match based on the investment mandates of the buyer.
Jacqueline, if I'm casting a net, how common is it for a buyer to be that specific and that stringent on this? Is that like pretty everyday, or?
There's a lot of nuance in all of it. I think the key questions to ask when really unpacking the investment management platform and expectations that they're going to have on you is, like, as my clients move on to your centralized platform, will they incur any extra costs, either, expense ratios or just actual costs for the manager as if it's another third-party manager? Or what is, Alan mentioned, like a 3-year timeline. What is the expectation around that? And then as the advisor, knowing, okay, what concentrated positions do my clients have that it may not even make sense for those to be unwound on even an extended timeline, and hear from the buyer that there's always going to be a fiduciary lens around it when making changes to the holdings, and everyone being okay with some holdings migrating over a much, much longer and then the operational, who's doing the trading, and maybe I have someone on my team who currently does the trading and they can't really be repurposed into something else. What do we do with that person over time?
I will say, and she touched it, no buyer is going to say, all right, even the ones that want you to fully adopt their models or platform quickly, they're not going to come in and blow out of all your positions that create these adverse tax consequences. It'll be done in a structured process over time that is suitable for the clients. They don't want to create those issues either. So, but investment management, of all these areas, so the structural ones are the easiest because it's real quick data points. The operational ones tend to be easy too, because most sellers want to get out of it, right? The client experience, that's the one that really needs unpacking from both the planning, how you're onboarding clients and how you communicate your value prop, as well as the investment piece. Like, that's where we got to spend a lot of time. And as she said, there's way more nuances in this segment that are, they require a lot of detail and diving in to really get to that point where you can say, okay, that that firm and I are aligned not only on their client experience, their investment worldview, how we're going to implement, all that is much more detail.
Well, that just about does it for our content. The three categories that we unpacked today: alignment points, operation, and client experience. And, so you've heard Alan and Jacqueline riff on it. And obviously we speak for the market, but we're going to get a little bit more specific, which brings us to our first guest. Alan, you spent some time with Art of Perigon, and we'll be looking forward to seeing what you guys unpack on these three topics when you guys chat. Well, let's get right to it. Alan and Art, here we go.
I am really excited for this guest, Arthur Ambarik, CEO of Perigon Wealth. Welcome to the Buyer's Boardroom, Arthur.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here. It's great to see you as always, and I'm excited about the conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I've known Arthur, I guess we met probably 4 or 5 years ago. You were about 800 million, I think, when I first spoke with you, and you are now 8 billion. So quite a bit of growth in 4.5 years, 5 years.
Yeah, you make it sound linear, but definitely some ups and downs in there. But it's been a good run, and I'm obviously we've had a good relationship, and I'm glad we met 5 years ago. It's been a good partnership.
Well, we think so as well, and we're thrilled to have contributed in a small way to your growth with a few wonderful partners that are now at the Perigon family. So today, Arthur, as you know, we're doing a series for sellers to help them understand how to sort of conceptually think about categorizing buyers. But today we're going to talk about autonomy differences. And autonomy, as you know, is a big topic. We can maybe describe that as a fear of losing control that a seller might have. They're all entrepreneurs, as you know. Fierce entrepreneurs, I should say, just like you are. And the last thing they want to hear often is, I'm going to lose that autonomy. They call it independence. But also, as you know, it's not a binary thing. It's not either like I'm losing all of my independence or I'm keeping all of it. There's the spectrum out there that exists. We call it the decision maker, the autonomy profile. It's what does your prospective partner allow you to retain in terms of decision making, right? And so, and when I think about Perigon, I tend to think about you're one of the more entrepreneurial firms on the marketplace. In fact, when we first met in person in your San Francisco office, you and I had a little sparring match about the need to require firms to make changes. And you were quite eloquent and adamant. And I was like to say you were also right in the argument about I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but why don't you explain to me how you think about autonomy and specifically how Perigon has built this model to support your requirements of autonomy?
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, that push and pull between what's scalable operationally and how we show respect for the advisor-client relationship continues today. So I think it's a constant work in progress. And even since we met, I think we've changed a bit in how we think about things. But I'll start high level and then kind of dig in on some specifics. So one thing is, we are advisor founded. We just took on a new capital provider, as you know, in January, and we're still majority advisor owned, and that's really important to us. And I remember sitting in a room, probably 8 or 9 years ago, when we were, maybe $500 million in assets under management, and with some folks, and we said, okay, what is, we want to go out, we want to be one of the premier destinations for advisors who are like-minded. If you're a financial advisor finding a home, you're searching for those differentiators, right? You're searching for, okay, what is it about everybody's going to say certain things about who they are, right? We're going to back office the table stakes. We're going to back office support compliance. We're going to back office, technology. We're going to be fiduciaries, all of these things. What is it then? We have to dig in on what the differentiators are. Why is this a good fit? Why are these people like-minded? Why do they fit into a certain niche? So for us, the first thing is Perigon going to be built to service the end client or built to service advisors? And very quickly, we came to the conclusion that clients don't consume firms. No, that's not across the board. I shouldn't say clients don't consume firms, but our belief was that clients don't consume firms. I think there are certain firms in our industry that are built in a way, some very successful firms where, they have a process where the clients are consuming the firm. For us, it was always a belief that clients consume people, advisors and advisory teams. And so the firm should be set up to service those advisors so they can best service their end clients. So that was the starting point, and from there, boy, then you start getting into, okay, so then it starts to sound like a platform, right, where advisors are plugging and playing in, and that isn't exactly what we wanted either. So in a binary world, there was a platform, right?
It's sort of like a la carte, pick whatever you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You just plug and play, and everybody's kind of siloed. And then on the other side was the enterprise. The enterprise, again, some very large, successful firms in our business where everybody does the same thing, right? Where everything from investment portfolios are managed exactly the same to financial planning processes are the same. And for us, I think we've always wanted to manage that trade-off. Some folks in our industry at the likes of Focus and Schwab have called it, the trade-off between customization and digitization, or the trade-off between personalization and scalability. And that's that push and pull that we're trying to find. It's trying to maintain that sanctity of the client advisor relationship and letting the advisor control that front stage with the client while trying to operationalize as much backstage as possible. So that's kind of the high level.
Yeah, well, you touched on that early, and you used the word table stakes, which is true, and that's the want to define that. That's what we would call the structural components of divesting decision making, and these are things that I would say are pretty much uniformly true across the board. Not for everybody, but you are going to require centralization of the ADV, centralization of technology, centralization of the accounting functions like HR and payroll and bill pay. All that stuff is being centralized in your world. So, and that makes sense to me because, practically speaking, I don't know how you support and help people improve their business, their client experience, however dogmatic you might be in those things, if you don't have centralization of those table stakes, as you mentioned it. So, but where you are expressing like this tension of being able to, help improve partners' lives while still keeping them at the forefront of pulling the trigger, making the decisions. You call it the front stage, I think, which is the client facing component of the business. So it's the investment recommendations, it's the planning recommendations, it's what you are doing on behalf of your clients. So that's where I think you're articulating that Perigon at least sees that your job is to improve or help the advisor, and in turn that will naturally trickle down to the client.
Absolutely. I think a couple things come to mind. One, when I talk to other advisors in the firm who have a different niche or do things a little bit differently for their clients, like let's say your investment philosophy is individual stocks and somebody else's ETFs, right? My belief is that the clients consuming the advisor with the individual stocks consume that advisor, and the clients with the advisor and that's just an example around investments. Obviously, there's something about the niche people have and who they work with, whether it be from a net wealth perspective, from a demographics perspective, whatever it is, that those clients are attracted to that advisor and that advisory team and what they do. Those clients aren't going to switch. They aren't going to want to switch and all of a sudden start doing things the way that I do. That's the idea. And again, that's so for advisors who are looking to come in, maintain as much continuity around the client experience as possible. I think it makes for a better fit.
Yeah. So let me play devil's advocate here and ask you a question.
Yeah.
I know you've answered this question before, so it's not going to be a shock to you. But as you went from 800 when I first met you to 8 billion, how do you maintain, well, how do you know that you don't, if you're letting the advisors, and I'm going to use the phrase do whatever they want, and I think you're going to rebut me on that. But
Yeah.
how do you maintain like consistency or continuity, protect the baby as it were, if you're giving so much freedom and flexibility to the individual partner advisors?
Yeah, do whatever they want. Obviously, isn't what we do. There are certain,
There's guide rails.
there's certain things that we have to put in place, in particular around more sophisticated investment products, private investments, that kind of thing, where you can't, as a firm, that's not really plausible. But thankfully, technology has helped out a little bit. I think that if we go back 10 years, it would have been very hard conceptually to pull off what we have today, in that you can have all of these, again, from an investment perspective, let's say all of these different investment philosophies, whether it be passive, whether it be smart beta, whether it be active, whether it be funds, whether it be individual stocks, whether it be public, private, and you can build this platform and you can have an investment management team that can manage the backstage aspect of that.
Due
So
diligence,
you're
research, things like that, that give you,
trading.
yeah, trading. I mean, that's a big one. That's what I was when I was waiting for you. The centralization of trading helps you a lot in being able to protect the firm from anybody who went rogue or just made a mistake. In your trade, you can centralize the trading while giving them the ability to be acting as more of the, I guess, the PM, I guess, in that scenario.
Yeah, and I think any advisor who's being intellectually honest can accept the fact that they're not making a difference for their clients by being the person executing on the trades.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
They're not the ones managed. They might have an investment philosophy that they think is best for their clients to achieve their financial goals, but their time is not better spent doing all the work implementing and managing that
Sure.
investment portfolio.
Or even
So
even in the most, let's just say I'm doing air quotes, controlling advisors, even in the, there's aspects of what they're doing that should just totally come off their plate, even if if they're in doing so, they feel like they're losing a degree of control. These are things that aren't adding value. And so I agree wholeheartedly with you there. And,
I
I
think,
think I
sorry.
do think of you, at Paragon, when we encounter firms that, they're highly entrepreneurial. They love all the aspects of the business lift by divesting all the operational junk out of their life. These tend to be the ones that might have a feeling of, hey, we want to keep doing our investment management program. And we've done deals with Paragon, so I know you guys evaluate their investment program closely to make sure that you're comfortable with it. There's nothing funky or crazy going on, and you're going to centralize the trading. And so you're protecting yourself in that regard, but giving them a high degree of autonomy. And hey, look, going back to my first time meeting you in San Francisco, when you told me that you just don't feel like it's your position to tell an advisor to stop doing things that have made them be successful over their career. And kudos to you for holding your ground on that, because you built an $8 billion firm in 4.5 years. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think technology has helped out quite a bit. I think the expansion of our team and our operations, we have some really talented folks who can actually implement on some of these ideas these
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
I want to talk about like a couple other things too. Administration.
yeah.
Um, you know, Another example, like advisors might want to pick their custodian. They might want to, for different tax or estate planning reasons, they might want to pick the registration on their accounts. Like, do I want a trust? What kind of retirement account do I want? How am I going to align again the account registration or the custodian with what these clients need? I don't think any of them want to be doing paperwork and opening accounts and
Right.
making sure. So that's the trade-off there. Last, I'll say is financial planning. It's a harder one. The push and pull there, it's a very personalized experience on the front end. Investment planning, operations, compliance, technology. These are all things that we found are somewhat easier to operationalize backstage. That push and pull on the financial planning process, and I've seen this across the industry, is still something that is a work in progress. I talk to folks at much larger firms and they say, yeah, our financial planning is centralized, but it takes a month to get a financial plan, and that financial plan doesn't come out the way that you want it to.
Right.
And so, just an example of where we're not there yet, but trying to find that happy.
Well, I think you've done, I think, a great job at Perigon at building things that the advisors can access if they choose to. I mean, not that I'm not talking about the operational things that we need to divest to make it all work, but practice management, organic growth drivers, all these things. Perigon has spent a lot of time and effort thinking about how do we create things that our advisors could benefit from. We're just not going to take the position that they have to implement things that are, foundationally deviating from how they built their business, and it's working. So, well, Arthur, it's been fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. We're huge fans of Perigon, and see you guys. We're thrilled about the new partnership with Constellation, as you guys are. Carl and the team there are fantastic capital partners, and think you guys are definitely one of the. You already have been kicking butt, but you're one of the up and coming national firms that people should know about. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Really appreciate it.
All right. Cheers.
And we're going to cut it away for our next interview with Brent Brodeski, the CEO of Savant, and hear their perspective on what we've covered on this episode. Alan, take us there.
I'm super excited about our guest, Brent Brodeski, the CEO of Savant Wealth Management. Brent, welcome to the Buyers Boardroom.
Thanks for having me, and been looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is going to be a cool interview. And by the way, congrats on the success that you guys have had. It seems like I read about an acquisition every other week in the industry rags. You guys have certainly come on the scene very strongly as one of the dominant, not only the dominant firms in the industry, but certainly one of the more active recently.
Yeah, well, what I'm really excited about is we're not buying anything and everything, right? We're being highly curated and still having a lot of success by really differentiating who we are relative to the other platforms. And it seems to be resonating really well with, frankly, with buyers who are looking to be around and be part of something really bigger, better, cooler.
I had the benefit of visiting one of your offices in Chicago and meeting the team, and wonderful consistency of the message. You clearly have a well-defined, articulate vision for who Savant is and where you're going. And to me, that's a great indicator of not only that you have the reality is there, like you are building something truly differentiated, and that no surprise that you're having success attracting partners. So today we're talking about autonomy differences. And so I'll frame this, and then I'd love to get your just candid feedback, which I've seen you speak before, so I know you have no problem being candid. And so we think of buyers on the spectrum of autonomy. We like to tell sellers that it's not a binary choice, being fully independent or you're not independent. It's more like a spectrum of autonomy, with buyers on one end that they really see themselves, okay, we're going to acquire the practice and centralize the back office and pretty much going to leave them alone. And then on the other end of the spectrum are buyers who they're going to acquire the business and essentially request, a significant amount of change and adoption of their process standards and so forth, less autonomy. And then there's everywhere in the middle. So I don't know if you agree with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then certainly, why don't you give us an opening statement just on how Savant sees themselves on that spectrum, and then we'll get into the specifics.
Yeah, I think there is a spectrum, and there's what the buyers say and then what really happens. Now there are some at the far, one side, which is, hey, we're just a financial buyer. We're going to put money in you, maybe centralize accounting, but just leave you alone. And for some that are really looking to leave their name on the door and keep doing things exactly the way they've always done them, are so concerned about having upgraded capabilities that might be a solution. I kind of think of it as Hotel California. You check in, you can't check out, and you're sort of frozen in time around what you're doing, which I think is okay in the short run, but in the long run, as the world goes faster and, there's better competition, I think that's a tough model. The flip side, of course, is square peg, round hole, crap, take it or leave it, get rid of everything you've done that you've done to be successful to today, get rid of your personality, preferably get rid of all your people, or most of your people, and listen, the buyers on either side have been successful. I think there's real flaws on both of those. So obviously I'm biased. We're somewhere in between where certain core elements that are non-negotiable, our values, our principles, our vision, centralization of certain, functions, having a single brand, to us, that's non-negotiable. It's really hard to build one brand, let alone having 70 or 80 of them, as some firms do, right? But the flip side, we're partnering, we're not acquiring, we're partnering, with entrepreneurs who've been successful, with passion for what they do. And they weren't really good at what they did. We want to be partners with them, right? We're not a financial buyer where we do as much of this as possible and flip it in 2 or 3 or 5 years. But in our case, we're building a firm that I used to say 30 years and people never believed me. So I just say 10 years, and building something we can grow 10 times that everybody wants to buy, but we want to continue to hold because we're proud of it. It's a great investment, right? So when you're doing that, when you're putting it through that filter, there's certain, synergies you want to gain by centralizing things like compliance and accounting and technology and HR functions, and creating, workflows and building AI into the systems going forward. Those things are non-negotiable, but they really create a more robust value proposition, frankly, for, the advisors, clients, and for the founders that partner with us. There's local differences in culture, which are just fine, right? There's local traditions. There's typically, firm that joins us, they're looking for new plays in the playbook, because want to have a more robust playbook. On the other hand, there's certain things they do really well, and it would be silly for us to not embrace those. And in some cases, if they have plays that we don't have in our playbook, adding them to our playbook, or in some cases, if they have a play that's better than ours, we'll whip out our page and stick theirs in. We still want to get to kind of a Savant way, best practices way of doing things that allows, local autonomy and local flavor and, obviously advisor judgment, because each client situation is unique. And increasingly, a lot of our new partners maybe bring niches that are unique, that we don't have expertise in. So the last thing we want to do is lose those plays. But it's like the best of, right? Let's make sure we're highly aligned around the things that matter, like values, vision, key goals, brand. Also embrace the best that each of our partners can bring to the table.
Would it be fair to say that the Savant way, clearly there's some core things that were foundational building blocks of Savant that exist, but then it's an amalgamation of best practices that you've gleaned from other offices. So it's not as if you and the team are creating all these best practices in a vacuum. It's actually surveying the landscape of your existing partners and new partners that are coming on and saying, hey, that's what you're doing there is probably better than what we're doing. Let's adopt that, make it, a part of the Savant way.
Right. I mean, one of the things I'm really proud of is one of the things that is common among our partners and our team is we embrace humility, right? And we're smart, but we're understated, right? We're not flashy. We're saying, all right, we all truly want to have the best way of doing things. And I don't care if it's the CEO, me, or the new intern or a new partner that has the best idea. We want to embrace that and create, a partnership and an ecosystem where we're all always aspiring to excellence and looking to innovate and, really create scalable best practices. And so that means we can't just say square peg, round hole, do it our way or the highway, right? And incidentally, the kind of firms that are okay with that, like, okay, we'll throw out my entire playbook and use yours. Those are the ones that are looking to exit and go to the beach, right?
Sure.
Give me the most money in cash at closing and let me out and deal briefly, right? Like in that kind of scenario, that works okay with my way or the highway. And, I don't know, maybe 15 years from now, if we're 20 times larger, we'll have it all figured out. But I know for now we don't. We got a really good winning playbook. We've won really well. All of our partners that join us, they accelerate their growth rate. We have 29 deals, and in every case, they've accelerated their growth rate. So I know it works. There's 4 things, when we're looking to partner that we're looking for. A, the best talent. Second of all, moving into new markets. It's really hard to go greenfield into a new market. Third of all, when we're in a market, density. Like, how do we become bigger in a market? Because the bigger players in any given market tend to get more at bats. And then fourth of all, which is what we're talking about, is new plays in the playbook. people that join us, they're not going away. So why are we partnering with them? Because they got great concepts. They've run businesses, they've grown businesses, they've been great advisors. Let's not be have big egos, but rather think like they do at Mayo Clinic, where they put the best people in a room and then they figure out how to best diagnose and prescribe treatment plans. And so that's kind of the part of our culture, right? It's the best ideas win, working as a team. Check your ego at the door.
Hey, humility is something people ask me, where do these deals fall apart? They think they fall apart on the valuation and deal terms, which sometimes can happen. Where they fall apart the majority of the time is a lack of humility. And it's usually, unfortunately, it's on the behalf of the seller. They are proud of what they have built, and there's nothing wrong with being proud of what you've built. But when you're so proud that you refuse to see other ways of doing things and consider that there may be a better mousetrap, better differentiated way of doing things that's different. It's not a slight on what you've done in the past. It's just having the humility to say, okay, I'll listen. And, I'm certainly able, if you can demonstrate that this is a better way, I'll adopt it. Sometimes I might not understand it, but hopefully that humility is rooted in me, that I'm willing to take the step that you're asking me to take. And so,
yeah, that's a hard thing to deliver at scale. The vast preponderance of our large platform company competitors are PEO, and they're run by hired guns, right? And a lot of times those hired guns, they don't have humility, right? They can point to, they got the X amount of deals done, but, we think of it as a founder-led firm. I started the company, 31 years ago. When we look at it, we have 25 founders now that still are with the firm. And we are a firm of founders that collaborate, right? And look for the best ideas, embrace the best ideas, and want to deliver excellence, integrity, want to continue lifelong learning. So yes, maybe I did these things to be successful in the past when I was a 20 or 30 or 50 person firm. But Savant's a 550 person firm now. I think we'll be 1,000 in 3 years, and probably a couple thousand in 5 or 7 years, right? The how you're successful evolves. So it's, in some ways, it's like, let's embrace the things that are non-negotiable, right? And the things that have made us successful, but also be willing to embrace new plays in the playbook, for all of us.
Okay, so I think I know the answer to a few questions, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly and get to the one that I know everyone's thinking about. But so when it comes to this autonomy question, you've already mentioned some non-negotiables, and I love those. So the non-negotiable would be the brand. So in the Savant world, when I joined Savant, we're going to adopt the Savant name, and that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
How can you deliver anything on the organic growth front if we're operating under different flags?
Right.
So I'm going to adopt the Savant brand. We're all going to be on one ADV. So structurally, those are non-negotiables. Yes. Correct. Okay. All right. And then operationally, there's all the back office functions, but let's go through them. So when I joined Savant, I'm going to be removed from a lot of operational functions, not all of them, but let's say compliance, accounting functions, bill pay, accounts receivable, human resources functions, technology management, those are coming off my plate, correct? So I don't have to worry about that.
They are. So those are centralized. That doesn't mean that everybody that's doing compliance is in the great metropolis of Rockford, Illinois, our world headquarters, right? It's the people are where they're at, right? Our investment committee, I think there's only one person from Rockford on the investment committee. The rest of the investment committee are all over the place, include, a lot of the top investment people from the partners that we've, combined with over the years. So let's say you're a founder and you're client facing and that's what you love doing and want to do more of. Yeah, you're going to be out of compliance. But if you've got a great compliance person on your team, which oftentimes, medium or larger firms do, then they're going to combine with our compliance team.
Yeah, you're touching on a point that is easily one of their biggest concerns, which is, hey, I've got these team members. Is Savant going to want to get rid of them? And the answer is no. Like that, if you see a talented person, even if it's in a role that's being, quote, centralized, it doesn't mean that they have to be in Rockford. It's your mission. They can be a part of the compliance team. It's a war for talent. And so the last thing you want to do is get rid of talented people. Doesn't mean that they can't be performing a role that's broader than their local office as they become a part of maybe of the central team, but they're still local, and so that's a really good topic.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I always tell our prospective partners is, I'm making a bet on you, right? If I'm making a bet on you, then I'm going to make a bet on any of your people that you think are worthy. Now, if there's somebody on a performance improvement plan or somebody that, is going to retire in 3 to 6 months. Let's just have you resolve that before you join us. But anybody that's good, they've got a spot on our team. Now, their role will change. In some cases, they won't. I mean, if you're an advisor, you'll be an advisor. Client service, you'll be a client service. If you're a generalist, you'll become a specialist on our team. But that's been every deal we've ever done. We've brought everybody over. But I think that's really important. Yeah, and like I said, the number one reason we're doing this is to get great talent. And so when we do a partnership, we're getting a whole pile of top people right out of the gate.
Yeah, no, that's well said. Okay, the most important, when I find, when we get into this onion, let's call it, of autonomy, and we start peeling it back, the thing that they're most concerned of, the advisors, tends to be client-facing functions.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of services that Savant delivers beyond portfolio management and financial planning. I guess the question is, with all the support that you give them in those two functions, planning and investment management, are you trying to remove them from being the gatekeeper to the clients, or are you trying to empower them? Like, who's making the final decision?
No. God knows we don't want to go into their market and have Brent manage their client book, right? I never want to meet their specific clients. Really big ones that they want to introduce to be great. But long story short, it continues to be whoever's the lead advisor continues as the lead advisor. If you got a co-advisor, as we call it, or kind of a more junior advisor, they're going to continue in that relationship too. But the difference is they're going to be complemented by specialists. Most of the firms, they operate as generalists and they do it all. The evolution is, okay, you're going to get new friends, call it sales, right? You're going to manage relationships. You're going to convey wisdom. If you got gray hair, you're going to mentor. And if you don't, you're going to be menteed. But that's going to be the primary focus. Now, we've got a whole wealth transfer team that can go deep on estate planning. We've got a 100-person accounting firm that can go deep on taxes to complement. Now, some advisors might be CPAs by background and have deep interest in tax, may not need to leverage that as much as somebody else that maybe doesn't have that background. So different lead advisors can lean on the tax group more or less. We've got a dedicated, trust company. We've got an insurance group that's fee only that come in and really do deep analysis on insurance policies. And I can go on and on and on. So, but the key thing is the client still gets you to manage that relationship, to deliver services.
So you have the tools, the resources, all of the relevant domain experts in various areas that frankly make me better and hopefully more attractive to my clients, given these are now my team members. It's not this external party. It's like, this is now a part of my team, is this experts in these relevant areas. Talk to me about portfolio management. So I think if I would state it properly, Savant, you have an investment philosophy that you want to have alignment on with your partners. Right. So maybe walk us through like that specific component.
We don't think you can time markets. We don't think you can pick stocks. We embrace broad global diversification. Use a lot of dimensional, a lot of Vanguard, a lot of ETFs. We do direct indexing in-house. We think there's deep opportunities on tax alpha on multiple fronts. So we like to say, one of the investment value propositions from our deep venture specialists is tax alpha on steroids, which is, an area that you can quantify and prove value add. So what might change, once in a while we get a new partner where their advisors do their own trading. Our advisors don't trade, right? We got a centralized 25 to 30, lost track how many exactly. It's north of 25, maybe as many as 30 people that, what do? They focus on, portfolio design, the trading, building out the tax alpha, implementing the direct indexing strategies, and being available for the advisors to go deep if they get that engineer or that more sophisticated client that wants to understand nuances of markets or alternatives, as an example. So yeah, it's at the end of the day, think of the lead advisor as that general practitioner who can perform procedures in-house where they're qualified, but they can also tap into the investment team or tax team or estate planning, or we have a law firm, have those resources available to them.
Well, awesome. Well, Brent, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend with us and talk about your thoughts on autonomy. Certainly love what you guys are building at Savant and at Alaris. We're proud to partner with you and hopefully bring you many, many fantastic partners that can experience what we've been talking about here today. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
So close to the end, but before we do leave, guys, it's my favorite part of the show. It's the boardroom mailbag. Again, if you have questions and you want to write in, remain anonymous, we will air your questions in a future episode. It's boardroom@alarisacquisitions.com. It's boardroom@alarisacquisitions.com. Boardroom team, I'm 50 years old. I'm at least 10 years from any kind of exit, and it's too soon for me to be thinking of any of this. How can a future M&A market conditions change me, and impact me by waiting? So I think he's asking, he's not even close to doing anything, but if he waits, can market conditions impact him positively or negatively?
Well, he's asking like when is the right timing? And so, all right, so this is my subjective response. I think the best time to seek a transaction is when you're 5 to 7 years away from exiting, at a minimum, because from a buyer's perspective, most buyers, not all, but most, they don't want to acquire businesses where the owners are seeking a fast exit, because they're inheriting your succession problem. They want to have time to get to know the business, get to understand the client service that you're delivering, and bring in a Gen 2 if you don't already have one on the team. So I would say 5 to 7 years before you would say, I think I'm probably going to retire. During that period is a great time to be seeking an exit. Now, the sooner the better. There's all sorts of things that go into this answer. This person is asking about, I think about like M&A market conditions, meaning the valuation. Is that going to change? Well, sure, it could change. It could go up, it could go down. That more commonly, the terms will change, or could change if external market pressures occur. I don't really see multiples taking a substantial pullback at this size. The higher end of the market maybe, but at this size, no. I think if you're 50, I would tell this person you've got 3 to 5 years of window before buyers start really placing a lot of scrutiny, potentially impairing the value of your business because you're so close to exiting that creates challenges for them. So that's my answer here. I think if you want to add.
I agree with that. I would maybe just add, it's a great time to start getting your house in order, understand what buyers are going to want to see, really have clean financials, a good look on how you've grown historically, organically, inorganically, be able to articulate that, start to understand the options that are out there and what you will be seeking, and just to best position yourself and your business, any changes you want to make now to be best positioned for that when the time comes.
That's going to do it for Mailbag, guys. Alan, Jacqueline, another terrific episode. One more in the series. If you're following along, we're going to talk about expansion of services on our next Buyer's Boardroom. Until then, bring your friends and family. We got room. We'll see you next time.